You cannot turn it off because you were born with what they call a neurodivergent nervous system, which, by the way, is about 20% of the population and about the same amount of men and women through all cultures. And by the way, in the animal kingdom as well. We need to learn to differentiate what is the trait, what's the personality, temperament that we have and the wiring that we have, and what is the trauma that we carry. Almost every highly sensitive person I know carries trauma, and some of us carry a lot of trauma. So many of the things that create problems for us is not the trait itself. It's the trauma that we carry that is amplified by our trait.
Hello, welcome to the next episode of Healing Millions podcast. Today I have an amazing guest, Jole Berlage-Buccellati, who is a trauma-informed coach, therapist, and creator of the Sensitive's Way, a method that helps highly sensitive people turn their pain into purpose. Jole, thank you so much for being on my show. Thank you. It's my honor to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. As you know, I love sharing what's important to me, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Jole, you specialize in helping highly sensitive people find their purpose and heal their pain. Can we first define who are sensitive people? What is your definition of sensitive people?
I have a slightly different definition from a lot of other people. Because sensitivity is usually defined as through overwhelm. So all the things, we can't stand a lot of noise, we can't stand too many people, we're overwhelmed by too many smells and all kinds of other things. And then the second thing that usually, pops up is the emotionality, that sensitive people tend to be, the Germans say it really well, but I try and say it in English. We are very, very happy, and 5 minutes later, we're desperately sad. It's very hard for people that are not that way to actually follow us in our depth of emotions. But in my definition, highly sensitive people have a lot more going for them. We are very, very good systems thinkers. We are very good at understanding complexity because our brain is wired in a way that we have an open brain. So we don't just pick up more stress, we also pick up a lot more other information. We are very good at community, and we are extremely good at communicating. And I think that needs to be part of the picture. I'm sure we'll go into this in more depth, so I'll stop here for the moment.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's very important that we first define who are sensitive people, because, we get this all the time. Like, somebody says to us, like, you're too sensitive, you're this, you're that. But what does it really mean? Everybody thinks that in different ways. And I think that's why it's so important that we first define that. So my question to you is, why did you decide to focus on highly sensitive people?
Well, because for one, I am one, and it took me a very, very long time to appreciate my talents. Because just like, you and many other people, highly sensitive that I know, we tend to be judged for the two things that I mentioned, for the overwhelm and for the emotionality. And when somebody, actually a friend of mine, gave me Elaine Aron's book, The Highly Sensitive Person, I think about 10 years ago, I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. And, I really identified with it, and I had wished that I had known this many, many, many years earlier. And so I started my own research into what that different wiring of the brain actually means. And I realized that most of my clients were highly sensitive, so they seemed to find me. And so in a way, it just developed within the last 10 years into more and more clarity what this high sensitivity means, what it means in the bigger context of this world, and what it means for individuals to always define it as a minus. And I would say once we understand certain things about how we work, our energy field, I'm sure we go into that, it is actually a win situation. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. So, for people who are listening and thinking, okay, I'm a highly sensitive person, they might even think, can I even turn that off? Sometimes I'm overwhelmed with everything what I'm getting from the outside the world. So is there any chance I can turn that off?
No. Very clearly, you cannot turn it off because you were born with what they call a neurodivergent nervous system, which, by the way, is about 20% of the population and about the same amount of men and women through all cultures. And by the way, in the animal kingdom as well. So what happens is that we need to learn to differentiate what is the trait, what's the personality temperament that we have and the wiring that we have, and what is the trauma that we carry. So in order to answer your question, I think that really needs to be part of the discussion, because a lot of almost every highly sensitive person I know carries trauma, and some of us carry a lot of trauma. So many of the things that create problems for us is not the trait itself, it's the trauma that we carry that is amplified by our trait.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, because we hear that from the outside world, from our community, just like turn it off, continue doing what you're doing, don't be so sensitive, but it's impossible not to be so sensitive. So I want to talk about what is the biggest misconception people have about sensitive people.
That they're weak. That's the biggest misconception. And again, we would need to talk about trauma, because in a society where alpha people, even though I'm an alpha person as well, but let's say a certain type of alpha persons and narcissists and people that are the lone wolves are the ones that are the hot people, the successful ones. Of course, we look as if we were weak. But if you look at the state of our society and the world, we can see where that got us to. So the people that actually have other talents, like the ability to build community, the ability to listen. We are very, very good listeners. Many of us are healers, in your context. We have incredible power. But as long as if we identify as we are not the ones that are typically a winner, we will not have traction. We will not have impact.
Thank you so much. I think a lot of people underestimate sensitive people because they are not the loudest ones in the room. And that's why people very often think, oh, they're just weak and, they're not such a good leaders, but that's not true. We lead with the heart, and that's something different.
Yeah, we are the new leaders. That's I'm just writing a book about that, about sensitive leadership. But we can go into that later if you like. But what I really want to say is we were told so many times that not just that we're too sensitive, but that we think about too many things. And that's the complex thinking. So sometimes we're quiet because we have so much more data to process, right? And by the time the alpha male in the room will already have said whatever they have to say, and then people want quick fixes for things all the time, and then that's done. But a huge amount of information gets lost that way. And in school and in other places, we keep getting told that we are a problem. So that creates a problem for us, because it becomes, the kind of work you do, it becomes so difficult for us to open our mouth. So you add that, you need more time to process. Most of us are introverts, not all of us. Okay, they're even high attention seeking. The ones not high attention, the ones that seek, do crazy things like bungee jumping or climbing mountains and things like that. It does not mean if you're a highly sensitive person that you're always quiet and withdrawn, but the majority of us are. You add that up, then we think about other things than most people do, right? I remember that in school, I was reading books as a 12-year-old that most other people don't read in their lifetime. And I was always told, man, you are really weird. Why do you read that stuff? It was interesting to me. But, when you're 12, 14, 16, you want to fit in. So what you do, you bend, right? And then you judge yourself weak because you're not at home, as I call it. You're not in your center. You're not talking your own truth. You're trying to speak from a platform that's not yours. And then people judge you as weak. And when I understood that, I said, oh, that's a shit game. I'm sorry. That is not for me. I'm done with this, right? And the other thing I always heard was I did a lot of martial arts in my life, almost 30 years of martial arts. And people are like, you're sensitive? And you do martial arts? And I was like, yes, what's the problem? Right?
Sometimes people have the wrong perception what sensitivity is and how we can contribute to the world. And you've also mentioned something at the beginning of this conversation that it took you years to accept who you really are. And when did you realize that your sensitivity is not a burden, it's actually a superpower?
I don't think there is a specific point. There is one place where somebody said something to me which triggered a lot of other things. Would you like me to go into that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So while I was in my master's program to be a music therapist, I had a very, very good professor. So we all had to do group therapy, on ourselves, basically. And when this man left, he left in the middle of the program because he retired. He said, I want to talk to you. And I said, I watched you a lot. And what I realized is that you always ask the question, does that person like me? And I want to invite you to ask the question, do I like that person? And that was an absolute game changer for me. I'll always, always be grateful to that man because it just flipped something inside of me. And I was like, yes, this people-pleasing aspect, which is a huge aspect that a traumatized, highly sensitive person has, is we desperately want to be liked. And we're scanning the environment all the time, whether people are friendly to us or not. And if they're not, or we are afraid they're not, then we please and people please and listen and expend huge amounts of energy in the direction of these people in a team or in a group or whatever. And what he told me was like, hey, I mean, you're a smart lady. You've got lots of life experience. What are you doing? You have a choice here. And I think that was the most important thing about this. He showed me that I had a choice. And that was the empowering moment for me that triggered everything else.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. We also touched a little bit about trauma, that a lot of sensitive people had trauma in their life, and a lot of them don't feel safe in their bodies. How can somebody feel safe in their bodies again after such a traumatic experience?
We live in a good time for this. I mean, our parents and grandparents and others, weren't even allowed to talk about this. So I think in our day and age, there are plenty of methods to deal with trauma that is, well, let me backtrack a moment. Trauma is stuck in your body and your energy system. It's not stuck in your brain or in your thinking part of the brain. And there are so many methods now that address the body, that address the traumatic energy stored in your body, because that's the way to get rid of it and regulate your nervous system. And there are, things online, plenty of things online. I have something that I offer, a course that you can book where you can work on your own, where I teach you how to do certain things. So there is a huge amount of help out there. The thing that you need to understand is that talk therapy doesn't work. You need to address the body and the energy field. And I think, and that's a lot along your lines as well, you need to think about ancestral trauma as well. Meaning, what do you carry that is not yours, or that, that you've inherited from your ancestors? Because highly sensitive people have two added burdens, let's put it that way. And one is that we tend to be the ones that bring healing to our system. That means we have plenty of things that are not ours that we need to work out for our lineage. And the other thing is that while, in the first 5 years or 6 years of our lives, we pick up a huge amount of non-verbal stress and information from our parents and whoever caretaker or siblings are around us, because we are so good at absorbing and sensing. That's another part of being, a highly sensitive person, sensing what is the problem in the room. And especially in the time where we don't, we're not yet able to talk, we pick that up like sponges. And then we think that's our problem. Because at such an early age, we are not able, in the first 2 years of your life, you're hardly able to distinguish, this is mine and this belongs to another person, to my mother or my dad or my sibling. That goes for everyone, but for every human being, but for highly sensitives, it's even more. So we go through 20, 30, 40, 50 years of our lives dealing with things that we believe are challenges that we have, but they're not our challenges. So if you understand that, go and find somebody like Nina to get rid of that baggage,
Thank you so much for sharing that. A lot of people still don't know about that, but that's such an important point that you mentioned, that we not only carry our own pain and we don't only just pick up things around us, but we also carry pain from our parents, grandparents, inherited pain, and nobody talks about that. And sometimes people have a lot of issues because sometimes we are born to heal the whole lineage, and we don't even know that. And I think what you mentioned is so important, and that we need to look at all aspects of our lives, because it's not just only about us. And
Nina, could I just add
yes,
something?
please.
Especially in this day and age, because I hear it so much from other sensitives, is we also pick up what's going on in the world. Meaning right now, the situation is that tension that is there, that aggression, that fear that people have because the systems are breaking. We pick that up. So one advice I can give you, turn off the TV. Stop doom scrolling, because not like, everybody gets affected, but you get deeply affected because you feel all of it as if it were your own pain. And you need to protect yourself from that, because it's not going to make any difference in this world whether you read all of the feed or not. We can talk about that later, what I think you should be doing. But don't do doom scrolling and TV 24/7 and then complain that your nervous system is busted.
Wow, that's a very important point that you made here, because I think a lot of people have a lot of issues because they're watching a lot of TV and listening to radio or whatever, watching news, especially news. And I stopped watching news like years ago, and I don't miss it. Everything what I need to know, I know. Some people will tell you, "Hey, did you hear about this?" It's like, "Oh, okay," but I'm not missing anything. I create my own bubble to protect myself, as you mentioned, because if we don't protect ourselves, it's going to take over. Fear is going to take over, and then you have a panic attack. So you have like, "Oh my God, what is going to happen tomorrow? I'm going to die. The whole world is dying, and the whole world is collapsing." But when you turn the TV off, all of a sudden, the 50% of the pressure is gone. The 50% of fear is gone. And then you use just the tools to help yourself really ground and come back to your body. And I want to talk about this because I think it's a very, very important aspect, especially people who have panic attacks, who are sensitive, like all people out there, like not just sensitive people. We have a very hard time trusting ourselves and being in our bodies. What helped you overcome that fear and start trusting yourself and your body to feel safe again in your body?
That's an excellent question. So the first thing was, and I think that's one of the things that every highly sensitive person needs to learn, and that is energy management. That we understand that we are not, where do I start? Where do we pick this information up? Some people say we read body language really well, but I don't think that's the case. We are probably very good at that too. But I believe that we are energy beings, right? And there's plenty of research on that. So we pick it up via the energy field. We are extremely good at that. We are just like, we have this huge radar. And we need to learn to manage that if we want to function, if we want to have a nervous system that has the opportunity to calm down and to learn how to calm down. You need to learn about your energy field. That is really hugely important. Help me again. What was the other thing you wanted me to talk about?
How to feel safe in your body and trust in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you. That is, your energy field is obviously really deeply connected with your body, right? So if you don't understand about the energy field, you will never feel entirely safe in your body. You can do, as much yoga as you like and as much breathing exercises. If you're still inundated by other people's energies all the time, which, by the way, even if you turn off the news, you will still be in that soup. So you need to learn, you mentioned the bubble, to have some sort of mechanism to protect your own energy field, right? And you will feel safe in your body the moment you take your authority back to yourself, right? And you deal with the things that I always call it a backpack. If you have too many things in your backpack in terms of trauma and unhelpful beliefs and expectations of terrible things that are going to happen to you, your body cannot heal. You will never feel safe in your body. And that's an ongoing process. I mean, there were times in my life where I felt, especially while I was doing martial arts, I was, very, very grounded in my body. And then things happened, and then you shift out of it again, and you need to find a new way to recalibrate. And so I think for most highly sensitive people, this is an ongoing process. But you can come to a place where you feel connected to your body in trust. That's for sure.
What you mentioned here is also very important, that they need to learn how to manage their own energy. Because if you're a highly sensitive person, or if you're just like a person like everybody else, you still get a lot of information through energy, and we communicate with each other even though we don't speak to each other. Our bodies, like an energy field, communicate with each other, and you still pick up a lot of information from the outside world. And what is really, really important to learn how to clean your energy so you can feel like yourself again.
And clean your field, like you told me that there was a portal in my flat, right? Which I always picked up there is something here, but I couldn't pinpoint it because I don't have your talent. So that was usually helpful to me, and it feels much better to be in this space. So I was very grateful to you, and that's something else we need to understand. We don't all have the same talents, right? Just because we're highly sensitive, we're not all the same. I've developed this spectrum that, we could go into or not into as you like, but, it is not one soup. It is one basic trait that some of us have more or less. And then you have other personality traits and other gifts added to that. So that's also important to understand. It's not like you're highly sensitive, so you can definitely talk to angels. No, I can't, but some can.
Everybody has their own strengths, and everybody is good at something. We just need to discover what that is. And very often we are so close to our gifts that we don't see them as a gift. They are like, oh, that's nothing special. That's my everyday life. But your everyday life and your skills that are not so special are special to someone else. You need to figure that out. Very often we underestimate ourselves so much. And I see that over and over again, especially women. Women tend to overestimate and downplay themselves all the time. And that's why I would love to talk about your method, the sensitive sway method. Can you walk us through the whole method, how it works, and why is it so important?
So it has two parts, basically. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And one is, as you said, that I'm, a trauma therapist, because I realized that, as I said, most highly sensitive people carry a lot of trauma, and that needs to be addressed. And in a way, it was the same way you said it, one person at a time. So we work with that, and then I have ways of for you to find out what are my special talents. What is it that I'm yeah, we should address this as well, because this is a very important point. Most highly sensitive people have a mission. They have something they deeply care about. It doesn't have to be big. For some of us, it's a really big vision. But we all have this uncanny sense for something here doesn't work. And because we're so good at systems thinking and at complex thinking, and we're so plugged in, we are really, really good at coming up with innovative ideas. And that is part of my mission, is to bring people to a place where they are empowered to develop that mission. Okay? And that's basically my work. So one part of it is the trauma work in order to get rid of the baggage that a person no longer needs. And the second part is developing, okay, I have this deep desire to do that, but how do I do it? What do I need in order to do that? What else needs to go? What do I need to invite in? What are the practicalities of it? And my big idea is, just like you have Healing Millions, and I'm just writing a book about that, is to say that the sensitive people are the ones that are needed right now. We are the ones that need to show up, because we have the skills to look at the complexity that's going on in the world and be innovative and creative enough and listen enough and build communities to help heal this planet and heal society. But we cannot do it if we stay in the victim state. That's not possible. So that's what I do. I help people get out of the victim state, if you want it in a nutshell, and say, this is what I want to do. And if it is building a circle of moms in your community in the afternoons to do creative work with children, because that is hugely important to reconnect children to the earth and their own creativity. Or it is building a huge business, that brings, I don't know, cleans up the oceans. It doesn't matter. All of it is important, but we need to do it. We don't have time to sit there and say, I was bullied at school. I can't open my mouth. You have something to say, and what you have to say is important.
I love that. I love that perspective. Especially, I love that empowerment that you're doing. Because, as you mentioned, we have a choice. We can stay stuck and complain for the rest of our lives and live in the victimhood, or we can choose to break free and say, okay, this is my past. I have a choice how I'm going to react to the past. I cannot change it, but it really shaped me to become who I am today. That's why I have these amazing gifts that I can use to serve the world and create communities to serve moms or help support kids or whatever that is. I love how you said this, because very often we are like, I was one of those people. Like, I was complaining all the time about my life. Like, oh my God, I really hate it because I was born in war. Like, I I didn't like anything about that. But now I see, okay, but that shaped me to become who I am today. I got amazing gifts from that experience. I have a choice what I'm going to do with that. I have a choice to change the things in my life and change how people see things. Okay, let's bring more peace, more healing to the world so people can really heal and we can have more peace. I love what you mentioned here. I think that's really, really important for everybody who is listening or watching. Please, you have a choice. You are not so powerless. You're more powerful than you think you are. You just need to really let go of the pain you're carrying. And sometimes the pain you're carrying is not even yours.
Yes, and yeah, exactly. You summarized that really well. And I would go one step further, but that's just my character. I think you have a duty to do that. I think, like I say, there's a calling. We are being called. And like I said, in our generations, there are so many options now to get out of the victim state. And believe me, and Nina knows that about me, it is a challenge sometimes, if one has a really full backpack of things. It's a challenge sometimes. I'm not saying, it's an easy thing to do, but the time is now. And I would, how can I put this politely? There is no time for, I don't have the tools. Yeah. And like I said, it is not about doing huge things. All of us count, but we are here for a reason. We have these talents for a reason. And we need to build community with highly sensitive and with people that are not highly sensitive. I want to stress that as well, because we live in a time where we have this silo thinking everywhere. And I think it's really important not to say, only the highly sensitive people are the really hot ones. No. We need, and we have the skills for that if we are courageous enough and connected enough to bring community that encloses many people, because we need to work together. And there are plenty of non-highly sensitive people that have very similar missions, and they have other skills. Like some people that I know are really, really good business people because they're not so bothered by so many things, right? So building a community with them is really powerful, because you get two sides of a coin, and just imagine how powerful that is.
I love that. I really, really love that. And I love what you mentioned, like, you cannot complain. There is no tool for you because now more than ever, there's so much available to people. Like there are so many communities, there's so much support out there so they can use to help themselves, and everybody's trying to really bring peace and healing, and everybody's sharing their mission. And I really love how you mentioned that. And you also mentioned that you have a course on your website they can take. And I think that's really awesome. Start doing something. You don't have to change your whole life overnight. That's not possible. You can't. It might be possible, but I just want to say healing takes time. It really takes time, and it takes a lot of courage to face your fears, to face your trauma, and to heal. It's not overnight process. It takes time. And give yourself grace and patience to heal, and be gentle to yourself. You cannot expect to heal 50 years of your life in just one session. It takes time. And I also want to ask you about your Sensitives Way method, how people can implement that in their everyday life.
It is through working with me and going through the process, because I work very individually. I mean, I obviously have some things I have in my toolbox that I tend to use, but everybody has a different path and needs something else. So when you work with me, I will give you the essential tools that you need to take whatever the next step is. And for some people that would be more trauma work, and for other people it's more, how do I find orientation within my talent in order to build what I want to build, right? I call that the fundamentals. What are my fundamentals that are non-negotiable and that need to be part of my life path that I've been told, that are not important or not useful? So I remember, for example, a coach that I had, when he first asked me, what is your opportunity, what he calls the opportunity story? What do you want to bring to the world? And I wrote that down and I sent it to him and I said, please don't laugh because it's so big. And he said, well, I'm not going to laugh about you. If you don't state what you want to do, you will never get there. Now let's look at what you need in order to get there. So that's what I help people with. So you have this idea. So what you need inside and outside in order to build that.
I love that. That's like building business from the future, not from the past.
Yeah.
And
But
that's really powerful because very often we try to create a new life based on our past experiences, but if we do that, we only invite more and more experiences from the past. But if you create your life from the future, oh my God, you have unlimited opportunities to create life you want and you like. I love that.
and the change you want to bring. So it's like finding the connection to the template inside of you, that, so many of us have been told that the things we care about are not necessarily not important, but sort of dream. Are you dreaming of a world where, this and this? Yes, we are. and it is very necessary, and it's reconnecting you with that and helping you to find the courage to actually build that. And we talked about empowerment. We talked about, you know, working from the inside out, because we both know that's how it happens, right? And that's what I help people with, is what's that thing in the inside that wants to come out? Let's find out, and let's implement it. Let's find ways, and sometimes I also work with other people that know certain things much better than I do.
Beautiful. I really love how you help people really step into their power and do the work they love and create better life for themselves from the future, not from the past. I really love that. I think that's so, so empowering when you know I have unlimited opportunities. And you already mentioned during the conversation that you're writing a book about sensitive leadership. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So we talked about, most of it already, and it's called Navigating the Polycrisis and the Sensitive's Edge. So what is the polycrisis? The polycrisis is the situation the world is in now. We have so many interconnected crises there is such a huge complexity in this that it becomes totally overwhelming. It seems like, like we live in a village and every house is burning. I mean, the financial system, the political system, the education system, the health. I mean, yeah, okay. And the old ways of addressing that do no longer work. People try and solve that with linearity. They try and solve it with A, B, C, and D is always E. No, it's not. So we need to have people that are able to get that complexity, that can navigate that complexity, that have another template for leadership. So we talked about all of these things. It's about pointing out to highly sensitives and non-highly sensitives what amazing beings we are, all the things we bring to the table. And I talk a lot about systems thinking. I talk a lot about different kinds of leadership. I talk about trauma. I'm developing like a template for why is this important and why is it important right now. So it's exactly what we talked about, and that in a way is my mission, is to wake people up.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really love it. Thank you so much for the work you do. Thank you for making this topic more popular so that we can become aware of what's happening around us and that we are not too sensitive, we're just normal. And we just have a different way of seeing the world, and that's fine. And it's not the baggage as it's our superpower. And I really love that how you define sensitives and how you give them guidance to create much better life. Thank you so much for the work you do. Before we wrap up this interview, can you share more about how people can connect with you?
You can connect with me through my homepage. So that is www.thesensitivesway.com. You can find me on Instagram, Jole Berlage. You can find me on YouTube on The Sensitives Way, and you could also find me on LinkedIn if you wanted to. And you can drop me a message there and just talk to me for half an hour, or get one of the English. You could get my course on resilience. There's certain packages that I offer. So explore, look at my stuff, listen to my things on YouTube if you like, and let me know, give me some feedback. I'd be really happy to also hear how that resonates for people, whether this is helpful or not.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We will also put the links in the description below so people can connect with you and find you. And I highly, highly recommend connecting with Jole. She's amazing. She has a big heart, a lot of understanding, and a lot of knowledge and experience to help you navigate through your life. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And if you, my dear viewers, were inspired by this story, touched by this story, please share it with your friends and family members so they can be inspired too. Thank you so much for being here today. Until next time, be brave, shine your light, because the world needs that love and light inside of you more than ever. I'm sending you lots of love and big hug. Bye.